Hello class, so today I'm going to review basic essay structure and then I'll go over each of the portions of an essay, which we didn't do last week. And I'll show you the essay outlines and we'll analyze some sample essays together. So I noticed some of you in your drafts need a little bit help with this organization and knowing where to put the thesis and everything, so that's what we're going over today. All right, so remember last week we went over the purpose of an essay, as well as how to form an argument. Don't forget that an essay is a piece of writing that argues one thing. Every word should be supporting that one argument. So you can't have any anecdotes that go a little bit out of your essay just to make it funny or to add a personal example. If you are going to add anything personal into the essay, your whole essay needs to be analyzing your personal experience with the story. You can't have the whole essay be about the story in third person and then in the conclusion add something about yourself. That doesn't work. It has to be completely balanced. So think about it like if it's unbalanced, the essay tumbles over. It's no longer an essay if you have some information that doesn't fit with the argument and doesn't all fit together. So if you look at our visual from last week, we have the thesis in the center because this is our central argument. Everything in the essay surrounds this central argument. It is completely dependent on this argument, and the argument is dependent on these supporting examples. It needs to be supported so that your reader is persuaded to agree with your argument. You want your argument to be an original idea, something that you are adding to the story that you feel like nobody else would have thought of before. It doesn't matter if somebody did. At this point, we're not doing that kind of research to see if you have an original idea, but it should be something interesting, something that interests you, and it shouldn't be summary. It shouldn't be an argument or just a statement about what happens in the story. It needs to be an argument about what the characters represent, about symbolism, about the setting and the importance of the setting, something that shows an original thing that you can't just get from reading this story. You have to really think about it and analyze the story. So anything where you asked an interesting question, a critical question, or an abstract question can be turned into a very meaningful argument. So then we go to the first supporting example. And remember, this is that quotation analysis structure that we went over, not saying first, second, third. We're not doing that anymore. We're actually providing for our readers the examples from the story and then our analysis of that example, and then we explain how that example connects to the thesis. Then we always transition to another supporting example and always connect it back to the thesis. And we do it as many times as we want. You could do it 8 times, 16 times, depending on how many examples you have. And this could be, so this whole thing could be 4 body paragraphs and then the introduction and conclusion, or it could be 8, because connecting it back to the thesis could be its own paragraph. So you could give the first body paragraph is supporting the example, 1, and then you could do the second body paragraph is connecting to the thesis. And then you have third body paragraph is supporting the example 2, and fourth body paragraph is connecting to the thesis. That way you don't have paragraphs that are too long. However, if connecting it to the thesis only takes 1 sentence, then of course these should each be 1 paragraph each. Okay, so then you get to the conclusion. So you transition from each of these and then you're back to this central argument. Your conclusion is exactly like the introduction. But the conclusion comes after you've explained all of these examples. So the conclusion doesn't need to introduce the author and introduce the characters like the introduction does, but it does need to repeat this argument and then synthesize all of these examples. You need to explain to your reader how these examples support this argument. So if you're reading your paper and you can kind of, pretend that you have never read the story, pretend that you're not in our class, and pretend that you're just some person randomly reading this essay, imagine what questions that person might come up with. This is your chance. The conclusion is your chance to answer those questions. So I'm going to give you the basic outline of an essay. So this is the introduction outline. You have to provide a hook that engages the reader. You provide some background. You provide the title of the story, the name of the author, and perhaps the name of the characters. Remember, for example, you can provide the name of the author, Amy Tan, and make sure to distinguish Amy Tan from the narrator of the story, who is Jing Mei, or June, and her mother, which is another important character. And then you explain your argument in your thesis statement. The thesis statement is the last sentence of the introduction. Your readers in the United States will be expecting your thesis to be there, so when they read your essay quickly, that's the first place they're going to look for your argument. Then we have your body paragraphs. So if you remember those circles in that visual that I showed you, those were those body paragraphs. And remember, this is the literary analysis structure for a body paragraph. So you have the main idea or the topic sentence. You lead into the quotation, provide a little bit of context, who's speaking, and then you provide the quotation and a citation. So always remember to put the page number and the author's last name in parentheses at the end of the quotation. Then you paraphrase the quotation and explain what it means in your own words. Your own words should be simple. So you're imagining that your reader has never read the story and your reader needs a little bit of help understanding it. So you need to simplify the idea. And then you need to analyze the quotation and show how the example supports the thesis. Finally, you need to transition to a new paragraph. So transitions are really important. They create some flow in your ideas, some flow in your paragraphs. So you can either transition at the end of the paragraph or transition at the beginning of the next one. It doesn't really matter. You could do both even. So, for example, you could start the next paragraph. So you have your first body paragraph, then your second body paragraph. If it adds information, you could say furthermore. Another example of this is moreover. However, if it's a different idea. However, this is not the only example of figurative language. The most pronounced is, and then you provide another example. Although this issue is concerning, there are more pressing conflicts between the characters caused by ... So you could use these to kind of show how your paragraphs are leading into each other. They're kind of in conversation with each other. Okay, then we have the conclusion. So after you've written all of your body paragraphs in that form, you have your conclusion. So you want to restate the main argument, your thesis, synthesize, bring together all of your examples and explain clearly how they support the thesis. And end with a concluding note. You can end with a proverb, an expression, or a broad statement about the characters, the author, depending on what your argument is. Finally, when you're finished drafting, you want to review the essay. Always make sure that the argument expressed in the conclusion is the same as the argument expressed in the introduction. You don't want your conclusion to have information in it that is not in your thesis in the introduction. Make sure that each example in the body paragraphs is connected back to the central argument, to the thesis. You can use keywords from the thesis and repeat them in your paragraph so that it's very clear how they're being connected to the thesis statement. Make sure that your paragraphs are not too long. You can split up one paragraph and have two paragraphs that have the same main idea, as long as you transition clearly from one to the next. All right, so let's look at some examples of essays. So here's one. This is not exactly a level 8 essay, but it's given as an example for people in grade 8. However, it is a good example of what I'm expecting for this first essay. Your last essays will be more complex and more advanced, but this is what I'm expecting. So the author of this essay has a title and starts with a good hook. So everyone knows that Homer wrote great themes in his Odyssey, but his genius was not only in them. So everyone knows this is a really good hook because it includes the reader. It's a way to include the reader. So your reader could be like, yes, I do know that. Or they might say, no, I don't know that. So you're kind of signaling who your audience is. In this case, the audience are people who know who Homer is already. So then they say, the Odyssey is trimmed with details so fine that readers at first do not recognize a pattern in the tracery of word on golden word. Yet such subtle patterns do exist and tell us something both of Homer's literary skill and of the impressions he intends to leave with us. This is clear even in the detail of wool colors on a woman's distaff. For Homer sometimes displays his skill by marking a lady's identifying characteristic through the color of the threads she spins. A succinct examination of Helen. So if you look back, we can see that the author is providing a lot of background and kind of explaining what the story is about, and then leading into slowly talking more about women, and then finally shows that the thesis is about the two queens who will serve to illustrate this point, who will serve to illustrate the point that Homer displays his skill by marking a lady's identifying characteristic through the color of the threads she spins. So this point right here is the point made in the previous sentence. So this is a really good example of a good introduction because it starts with a hook that includes the reader. It gives some background, some explanation, and then slowly leads into the main topic, and then provides this argument. So we know that the author is going to be analyzing these two characters from the Odyssey. All right, so let's look at some of the body paragraphs. When we first meet Helen of Troy in Menelaus' palace, welcoming Telemachus, the servants bring sewing for her to do, a common occupation of ladies in the Odyssey. So the author of this essay is noticing some patterns. So while they were reading, they noticed patterns and marked them and made sure to include them in their essay to make it more meaningful. And the author is also providing background on the first time that we meet Helen, because the author is assuming that we have not read the Odyssey. Maybe we know Homer, but we've never read the Odyssey. Homer then begins to weave his delicate web. So this is a really great way to express the writing style of Homer. For he speaks of the distaff swathed in dusky violet wool. They provide an example that they found was particularly well written and shows Homer's literary skill. So weaving a delicate web is the literary skill. and the impressions he intends to leave on us. And then the author picked out this example to show us that literary skill. Now, at first glance, this detail is a poetic nothing. Perhaps all royal ladies spun purple cloth. Purple was, after all, the color of kings. So here, we understand, this is a paraphrase, we understand that the author is explaining that that Homer is talking, is saying that Helen is spinning purple cloth. And we only know that if we haven't read the story and we don't quite understand this language. We know that because the author of this essay made it very clear. Purple was, after all, the color of kings. So this is part of the analysis. The author is analyzing the symbolic nature of the quotation to explain it to us. Okay, so this very short paragraph provides a really great example of their argument about Homer's literary skill. And it fits very well with the thesis, because the thesis shows that he displays his skill when he's talking about the queens in the story, especially when they thread material. And the author of this essay is also connecting his literary skill to the skill that Helen is employing in the story, which was a really interesting, a very engaging and effective method of expressing their argument. And then the author paraphrases and analyzes the quote. So it's connected back to the thesis. It has a clear main idea. And then there's even a transition, this word yet. Yet if queens spin purple because it is royal. This is a clear transition from this paragraph to the next paragraph. Okay, so I want to show you just quickly. This is on Husky CT, so you can find it. It's in these sample essays. So you go to course content, module 1, and then find the writing resources and sample essays, and you'll find all of these resources. So let's just look quickly at the author's conclusion. So a lot of these paragraphs follow that same structure that the first one did, the structure we're going over and practicing. And then they conclude with this. There are many grand topics to be examined in the Odyssey, and many great characters. Yet the Odyssey could not be so excellent a likeness of God's creativity if it did not include somewhere in its majestic lines small, intricate arrangements which serve to display the skill of the author and impress the with delicate pricks a few important symbols on our minds. In his use of so simple a thing as the color of wool on a distaff, Homer has accomplished this feat. By doing so, he has in some measure mirrored the Creator. So this is a broad statement. She ends the essay, the author of this essay ends the essay with a broad statement about Homer, and restates the main argument and clarifies it for the reader, and restates the examples. This is the basic idea of the examples in the entire essay, is about the color of wool and weaving. So the author is connecting Homer's writing, as though he's weaving together a story, with the examples of weaving in the story by the two queens. So the conclusion does do all of the things that we said it needed to. So if we look back at the conclusion, we said it needs to restate the thesis, synthesize all of the examples and explain clearly how they support the thesis, and end with a concluding note, a proverb, an expression, or a broad statement. So the author restates the main argument, synthesizes the examples right here in this one small sentence. All of the examples have to do with wool and weaving. And then by doing so, he has in some measure mirrored the Creator is a broad statement about the author, about Homer. look at Works Cited page. So actually the Works Cited page, this is incorrect on this document. The Works Cited page should be its own page. And you can easily find this MLA format citation on ezbib.com. So I'll show you how to do it. If you notice, the writer of the author of this essay is not using Homer in here because Homer is not the editor, or translator. So they're using the name of the translator, just like we will be using the name of the woman who wrote the anthology. So she put together the anthology. So we're going to use her name, Beverly Lawn. So you'll use Lawn and then the page number in our textbook. And then Lawn, Beverly, 40 short stories, Boston, and then the publisher and then the date will be in your Works Cited page, not the author of the story that you're writing about. So let's look it up on ezbib.com. Oops. Hopefully they'll find it for us. Oh, I put it the wrong thing. It can't be a website, it needs to be a book. So I have to cite it again. So again, it's ezbib.com. This is it. I just have to check the information. Continue to the final step. Okay, Beverly Lawn is the author. I just need to change this because I think we have the 5th edition, and I'm pretty sure it's from 2015. You should double check this though. So let's look up 40 short stories, Beverly Lawn, on Amazon. Let's check. Oh, here it is. This one's from 2008. That's not the one that we have. So we have to, this is the one that we have. Oh, so it's from 2016, and it is the 5th edition. So 2016 right here. And then we create the citation. I don't know what this is. Okay, so now we have the citation. This is our citation. So you can copy and paste it and put it on the Works Cited page, just like it is here. So you should have a new page at the end that says Works Cited, and then you have the citation underneath. So you can just copy and paste it. You can save it for later, and it should be MLA style. You can copy and paste, and there are other options too to change it to a Word document, but copying and pasting is easiest. Okay, so now I want to look at the outline structure. So you want to have a catchy title that's short. Your introduction should include a hook, the author and title and the main characters and some background information, and lead into the thesis, the argument. The argument should be the last sentence of the introduction. Then you have the first body paragraph. You need a topic sentence that explains the main idea, how it will prove your thesis, or not prove because we're not using facts to support anything. We're not using statistics or data, but really how it will support your thesis. Give some context for the quote, lead into the quotation. Explain who says it and what's happening in the text when they say it. Quote from the text and citation, in-text citation. So remember, we used this one, used Fitzgerald, and the page number, you're going to use Lawn, the editor of our anthology's last name, and the page number from the anthology. Okay, and then we have the same structure for each of the body paragraphs. You can have as many body paragraphs as you have examples. Okay, and then summarize your argument, extend the argument, synthesize all of your ideas, and then show why the text is important. And then you can end with some broad statement that expresses how important or significant your argument is. Okay, so here's another example of an outline. It's a little bit more detailed, so you can look at this on your own. So all of this information is on Husky CT. You go to course content, go to module 1, and then sample essays. And you'll see all of these sample essays. And you'll actually also see one of my essays that has some examples. So this is my long introduction for my essay, but it gives enough background to clearly show how important this one character that I'm analyzing is. My style, my personal writing style, is to jump straight into it. So I say, on the surface, Jane Austen's Emma seems to be a book about a wealthy young woman who enjoys helping others by playing the matchmaker. This is my style. I always like to jump straight in. Some people like to give a general statement as a hook. I give this as a hook because I always start out by saying what some people think it is about, and then I prove them wrong. My essay has my name. Usually you'd have, the course number and then Professor Fairfield or whoever your professor is as the title, and as the heading. And you also should include the date. So January, when is our paper due? 11th, 2017. Then you have this, and it should be 1-inch margins. It should have a title in italics. It should have a clear introduction, and then I have my clear thesis statement. Miss Bates, due to her social position, modesty, and discourse, plays a pivotal role in causing Emma's change. So obviously, my essay is going to be organized like it is in the thesis. Social position first, modesty second, discourse third. Then I go through, we're going to go over how to do this kind of quotation before the next essay. Maybe I can find a good transition. So here's a transition. So knowing that there are good intentions behind every one of Miss Bates's words makes Emma's insult so significant for both the reader and Emma's life. In this particular scene, Emma portrays precisely what one must do when speaking to Miss Bates. So I'm still talking about the scene that was being discussed at the end of the last paragraph. That shows some flow between the two paragraphs. That's the kind of thing you want to achieve in your paragraphs as well. I do it again here. So it says, although one can understand how Emma must feel, this scene shows that her inner thoughts do not match her actions, and one questions whether she had selfish intentions behind all of her good deeds. Emma's actions clearly portray these judgmental thoughts. These judgmental thoughts is referring to the judgmental thoughts I mentioned in the last sentence of the last paragraph. So you always connect them. Okay, and let's look at my conclusion. This is my works cited page. It's a separate page. So this is what you need to do for yours. And then my conclusion says, the purpose of Miss Bates's presence in the novel, with her obnoxious discourse and sympathetic condition, is clarified in this scene. So I'm talking about one scene in the whole book. And then I kind of summarize the ideas. So this is my argument. I'm summarizing all of my ideas and providing some examples that kind of clarify my argument. I expand on my argument. And then I end with, on her ride home, she questions her judgment and decision-making for the first time after she offended the character I'm talking about, after Emma offended her. Her inner thoughts align with her physical actions. She is genuine and continues to be so for the rest of the novel. So my argument is that the character, because of this one interaction with another character, the main character changes. So my ending, my conclusion, is a statement that reinforces my argument, my main argument. You can do yours in any way. I suggest reading this essay because this is our objective for this whole semester is for you to write an essay like this by the end of the semester. So I suggest reading it, and it'll give you some insight into what a very close reading, close analysis, close to text analysis looks like. I go into great detail just looking at a couple of pages in the entire book. Okay. All right, so if you have any more questions about what essays should look like, please try to look at the resources first that I provide you. I provide a lot of resources on here. I give you how to do all of these steps. I'm giving you quote analysis forms so that you can fill out like this one. So if you are confused about paragraph structure, writing your paragraphs, and you want extra help, then fill out this form for each paragraph. And then you write out the paragraph. So fill out the entire form and then you create it into a paragraph. That should help you. It's a step-by-step instruction on how to write a paragraph. And this is synthesis. This is if you want to use two different quotations in the same paragraph. So it's a little more complicated. So look at these resources, try to use them, and then ask if you have any questions. I'm going to ask you to complete a short quiz, and this is just a long answer quiz explaining what you learned in this lesson, what you still need help with, and then you'll have to explain how you're going to use my comments on your draft to change your essay for the final. If you don't have my comments yet, then please email me and let me know because you should have them today. So let me know if you don't have them and I will see what's going on. All right, thank you. And stay safe and warm during the snow.